At the same meeting where Forest Hills, Farmridge, and the Forest Hill Shopping Center were approved north of Kingston, multiple neighborhoods were approved in the Bend Foothills, as well as along the river. For years, these areas sat undeveloped, passed over in favor of flatter, better connected land on the east side of the Carp River. It was simply easier to build there. But with those lands nearly exhausted and property values soaring, the foothills are becoming the hotspot for new development. That said, the same challenges that held these areas back before still apply today. The terrain is steep and the infrastructure is expensive. And while the foothills are technically close to jobs and transit as a crow flies, the topography means that travel distances will be long unless we prioritize connectivity from the very beginning. That's tough to do on hills, but I don't think it's impossible, especially if we're willing to get a little bit creative. So in this episode, we're going to do just that. And while our long-term goal is to connect Bend proper to the Copper Valley Industrial Park, that's a massive project. It is going to take multiple episodes to pull off. So today we'll start smaller, 2 well-connected hillside neighborhoods plus a new neighborhood along the Carp River, following University Avenue. But remember, connectivity doesn't just mean roads. We'll build out strong pedestrian networks and transit access too, so people can move through the area without relying solely on cars. We'll also preserve parts of the undeveloped foothills as accessible park space, making them a valuable piece of the city's green infrastructure network. And if you're excited to build on hills, hit the like button. Or if you're more curious about this mysterious rural development coming soon, hit the like button for that too, and let me know how you feel in the comments below. Or leave an emoji representing hills for the sake of engagement. And without further ado, let's jump right in. Thought it might be nice to start today with a bit of an overview of the area that we're going to be building in because it's quite expansive and the terrain is incredibly difficult. Basically, all of the finger hills and valleys that you're looking at right now are going to be a part of today's build. Now, this is a very expansive area with very challenging terrain, and whenever I have builds like this, I like to get some real-world inspiration. Now, one of the advantages of making your own map is knowing the areas that you were inspired by when you were building the map. And for this particular area, it was really the driftless area, southwestern Wisconsin. So I decided to take a look at La Crosse because it shares many of the same geological markers as this area. It has a river going through it, it's got a fairly flat basin, and it's got these finger hills and bluffs. The thing is, La Crosse and La Crescent, Minnesota across the river don't really build into the bluffs, so it wasn't a perfect one-to-one for this build. So I decided to go a little bit further south to Dubuque, Iowa. And I think that Dubuque might be the perfect example for what we're going to do today. Dubuque's a beautiful city, and it completely developed the riverfront and then moved up into the bluffs. And you can see that they've basically maximized what they were able to do by having a lot of grading, having a lot of switchbacks, and really not worrying too much about the elevation differences. It feels like the bluffs are a well-integrated part of the community, and that's exactly what we're trying to do in today's build. I'm also noticing how much foliage there is in the areas that weren't developed, so I really want to beef it up here. And then one thing that I take from looking at Dubuque is that they're not just cul-de-sacking the bluffs, they're having connectivity all over the place. So I'm going to force myself not to have a bunch of cul-de-sacs on the finger hills. We're going to send switchbacks down and really connect everything well. Now that we have a bit of inspiration, let's start building our roads. And the first one I want to build is going to be probably one of the most important roads in the build, an arterial going all the way up this side of the hill. But before we build this, I've got to upgrade some of the roads that we'll be connecting into because I don't want the roadway names to get all screwed up. So that means that we have to upgrade Riverbend Boulevard right here, which is already kind of screwed up. As well as University Avenue. Now, our arterial is going to cut right up the side of the hill, but I don't want to just throw a whole bunch of lanes at this, or at least not the roadway width. I don't want to have a 4-unit road here. So we will just use a 2-lane road for this, and we might adjust this a little bit later on in the episode once we know how much traffic this road's actually handling. Now, I want to make sure that we have grounding and constant slope selected, and we're going to be changing our elevation step because I want to carve this into the hillside, not build it up. So I'm just going to start right here and go straight up the side of the hill. And you can see this is an 8.8% grade. And if we were to do this just like this, we're going to be building up the hillside, and that is not the goal. So I'm going to drop this down until I see that we are not keying. And honestly, it looks like negative 11.25 meters is going to be a pretty good step for us. That's still a 7.7% grade. And the result is that we're carving into the hillside, which is exactly what I wanted. Now I'm going to take this back a little ways, maybe to about here. I'll give myself a node, and then I'm going to redraw this in from here. The main reason I'm doing this is I want to spread out that slope. It probably would have been like 13% if I would have taken it where it was. And we still end up blasting into the hillside, which I think looks great. Now this area right here looks a little bit unreasonable, so I'm going to key this one spot. And then for this one right here, I'll just imagine that we took some of our blast area and filled in the road right here. Now I imagine that we start to see traffic on this road right away, but until then, we'll keep building. And the first road I want to build is going to be a new local connection to this telecom tower. I think that this would be a minor arterial and this would be a major one. So we probably want to connect it to the minor arterial. Perfect. The second connection I want to make is going to be into a road that we haven't built yet. So we're not going to be doing much over this way towards the industrial park, but I don't want to make it impossible. So I'm going to draw a stub of a road in, but just imagine this as a planning road because that's ultimately what this would be. This would be on the plat, but not actually built, but it's a game, so we'll take some liberties. So the first thing I'm going to do is upgrade this road right here and then stub this into River Bend. And I'm doing this because this road is immediately going to turn and go straight downhill. And the whole reason I tackled this road first is I want to make sure that we have a connection between this neighborhood here and this road right here. And there we go. And now we're ready to draw in this neighborhood. But before I do this, I just kind of want to give my thought process a little bit first. So I want to make sure that we have nice, clean grids as much as we can, and that we're grading so we can maximize our developable area. I want to make sure that whenever we're adding a road, we can develop both sides, at least to the maximum extent practicable. So I don't want to have the roads right up against the side of the hill. I want to leave at least 2 units separation so we can have some homes. That would dramatically reduce the cost of the roads for the developer, and I think it's exactly what I'd expect to see happen. So the first road will actually be one that goes right along the side of the base of the hill. And now I'm going to extend this road down this way and have a nice gentle curve with the terrain. Now I want to start to build my grid here, but I'm noticing that we don't own this tile. So I'm going to buy probably 4 tiles, and this will cost us half our money, but I think that we're going to be just fine. And then for our grid here, I want this to be fairly tight. I don't want this to be a large grid. I want it to be highly walkable. So I'll probably go something like 9 units here by 12. And now I'm trying to mirror the natural terrain of the hill while also eliminating unnecessary roads. That's extra cost for no reason. Now it feels like this road right here could naturally lead us up the hill to this area right here. So I'm going to do a little bit of grading so that we have a place to build. Now for this, I want to have a minimum of 4 units for buildable area and 2 units for the road itself. So that is at least 60 wide. And I'm going to give myself 1 extra unit, so 70 brush width, so that I don't have to be perfectly centered. And then we'll make some building pads. And I'm going to imagine that we're blasting in, we're doing some grading. It's not the end of the world. This means that we have soil to do other things with. And this is pretty good. I'm just going to do a little bit more grading to clean things up, but I think that we've really maximized what we can do in this area. So this is, again, making sure that we can build on both sides of the road. Shouldn't be overdoing it, but giving ourselves the space that we need. And I think that this looks pretty darn good. I tried my best to fight the urge to smooth the hillside. I'm going to try to do that all day today. The only place that I did it was around the cul-de-sac, mostly because we're really constrained in that area and I feel like you would do the grading. But over here, I left the cliff sheer and I think it looks fantastic. Next, let's move on to our first finger hill. And the first thing that we have to do is a bit of grading. So I want to find places where I'm going to have flat pads. So these are places where we'll have cul-de-sac bulbs and things of that nature. So right here, I want to go as far as I can. So I'm going to grab this height right about here. So right in the middle of the two largest flat areas, and I'll just pull it out. And I'm going to imagine that I'm grabbing some soil and pushing it off to the sides. And the thing I have to keep in mind, again, is that I'm going to have a road, and then I need to have at least 40 units outside of the road itself. So I think 70 is a good safe bet here. I'll have another pad right about here, but this will be larger, and then I'll grade in between the two of these. Now this means that we're going to have a fairly substantial cul-de-sac, so we're going to probably need to have a switchback right here to get down to this road so that the cul-de-sac is as short as it can be. Now over here, I'm going to have a fairly large flat pad, and I'm going to imagine I'm pushing this hillside off to the sides to make this as wide as possible. So I'm going to grab this height right here. And then we'll slope up to this. This gives us actually a couple blocks through here, which is going to be really nice. And then finally, we're going to make our way up to this area. Now, I know that I want to have at least one block up here. So I'm going to draw a guideline for myself, maybe 16 units out. So I'll go 14. I'm going to maximize our sizes up here. Eventually, there might be more density, which is why I don't want the smaller blocks. And the reason why I wanted to draw this is this gives me an idea of the grading I'm going to do up here, because I think I'm going to slope up to this fairly gently. And then all of this soil that we just removed, we're going to shove down the hill so that we have another row down here so that we can connect up to this finger hill. So I'm going to smooth this out, and then we'll slope up here. I almost had a mini disaster over here as I connected down here, but I was able to fix it. But you can see that now we have a nice pad right here. And honestly, since we're already over here, let's just get to sloping this area out as well. I think this is probably as low as we go, and I'll just slope up from here. So I'm going to extend this out once again, and then slope from the top up here to our low point. Now we have 14 units right here. I think I'm just going to do 14 units square. And I ended up completely redoing these to make sure that they're perfectly square. And the whole reason I wanted to do this is I'm going to take this grid right here and basically extend this road out down here. So this is going to impact my grading. So I'm thinking about my roads as I'm grading and what roads are going to connect to what. So this one, for instance, I knew that I wanted to do this. So now we can have this extend right on down here. Now, I don't think I'm going to do all that much right here. So I'm going to have a natural termination and bring what will be two separate heights of grid together in this location. And now I need to figure out what we do with this. And I think that there are two separate things that I want to do. One of the things that I want to do is make a connection down here. And the other thing I want to do is make a connection over here. So this one's going to be a little bit easier. So I'll just do that right away. That one's no problem. For the other connection, you can see that this is gentle enough that if we were to switch back around a little bit, we might be able to have another roadway connection into this area, giving access to all of these jobs down here. So I'm going to remove this cul-de-sac bulb, or roundabout rather, and we're going to snake a road up here. And honestly, I think that that looks pretty good. The only issue that I'm thinking about right now is who funds this road, because the businesses aren't going to pay for this. They don't care. They've already existed, and there's no development right here right now. So I think I have to do a little bit of sloping right here so that we could have at least a home or two on this. Otherwise, this road couldn't be paid for and probably wouldn't be built, at least not without some sort of a grant. So we'll take a couple of liberties here and we can easily add some homes to this road now. Now there's a bit more grading to do, but I'm going to switch gears momentarily and fill in some of the roads on the first finger hill. And what I'm thinking for this is we can't go with our normal 2-lane road. I've been thinking about this quite a bit. I think that we need something narrower. So I'm going to draw with our Magnolia County 2-lane narrow road with sidewalks. There's no parking on this, so it's just slightly narrower. And I think it's going to be much more fitting for this kind of development. So I'm going to start back here. And I'm turning off snap to guidelines so I can just add this road where it makes the most sense to add it. And again, I'm just trying to make sure I've got my 2 units or so on the side of this. Now, a couple of things jump out to me right away. This is a really long block, so I'm going to divide this up a couple of times. And then I'll add a couple of cul-de-sac bulbs to formalize these as cul-de-sacs. And then right here, we're going to have our switch back down. And this is going to be a little bit of a trick, but I think it's totally doable. Basically, I'm going to send this road back completely straight and parallel with our main road. And then I'm going to switch gears right away and start going down the hill. And we have to get 25% down, so I'm going to drop 11-ish right here. Then I'm going to reset. Keep it more or less parallel. Then we'll drop down the rest of the way, but I'll add the parallel connection over here first. And that's probably a little bit steeper than I would prefer it to be, but it's not all that bad. One thing I want to fix though, is you can see that there's a lot of carving and some kind of jankiness right here. I'm going to get these a little bit closer and then Control H the heights. I'll do the exact same thing right here because then it starts to look like a curve, which is what I'm hoping for. And then finally, I could leave it just like this, but there's a little bit more detail work I want to do. I just want it to look a little bit more natural, like we blasted and didn't just leave this chunk right here. So I will slope this up like this. And honestly, I might even add a retaining wall. And I think that that looks pretty outstanding. The one thing that this makes me realize though, is we have parking all along this road. It's totally unnecessary. It means that we made this road significantly wider than it needs to be. But this would also allow us to upgrade this to be a 4-lane road. So I'm not going to necessarily take that down. What I am going to do instead though, is make sure that we don't have any of that parking being utilized. So I'm going to add street trees for the time being. And seeing how well this switchback turned out makes me wonder if I should add one going down here. Let me know in the comments below. I think for now I'm going to leave it, but if you guys believe that I should add one, I will definitely do that. Now we've got this next finger hill, and though it'd be easy just to extend this road straight down here, I think that we have to think about this valley right here because there's a lot of developable space. So I'm going to do a bit of grading down here because I think that we could reasonably have a whole nother block. And what I'm thinking is I want to have 2 connections up here if at all possible. So I'm going to just draw the roads the way that I think it makes sense, and then we'll grade around that. And I've graded enough right here that we can have homes going all the way up this street, at least on one side. And right here, I'm not 100% sure that I love what I've done, but basically, since we're doing all of this grading, I've just tried to make sure that we can develop as much of this as we can. Now over here, I'm thinking that I'm going to switch this road back around and meet up right about here. So I'm going to actually remove this road and grade up to this location. And then we'll do something like this to get up here. And I think that that makes a ton of sense. So now all we have to do is link these up. And only a few more things to do with our roadway network. I want to add a cul-de-sac ball down here. I think I'm going to upgrade the roads up here anyway to be the narrow roads. And then I want to finish off the grid up here. Just a couple more blocks to add. And with that, our roadway network is complete. And honestly, I think it looks very realistic and really good. So with our roadway layout complete, let's move on to adding pedestrian connections. We're going to be adding a number of pedestrian facilities throughout this entire area because I think that it's going to be important not just for recreational purposes, but also for utilitarian purposes. So obviously paths in this area would be utilized if you just wanted to go out for a hike or go out for a run. But I think that if we had a path, for instance, linking up this bluff right here to the neighborhood down here, maybe someone could walk to school. If you link this area right here to this area down here, maybe someone could walk to work instead of driving. So I want to make all of those targeted connections. Now for this, I'm going to be using the gravel pedestrian path. This is from the Road Builder mod. It's just so good. And I want to make sure that we again have grounding on as well as constant slope because I don't want any lumpies or bumpies. Now for the first one, I'm going to link up to this bluff right here. And I see that there's an opportunity in between these two homes to have this connection. This would be really difficult to pull off. I have a feeling that these people would fight tooth and nail not to have this here. However, we're going to just imagine that this was part of the original plat and they have no choice. So they get a path and they'll probably get a park as well. I've got an idea for that, but we've got to hold off just a little bit before I can execute that. And that's a nice connection, but I think I want to wrap this all the way around here as well. Maybe have a connection over to this part of the neighborhood. And I think on this other side, I'm going to have a connection that wraps all the way around here. Now over here in the first valley that we were working in, I'm going to have one connection that links back up to our main arterial. So we'll have to switch back up a couple of times here. And I've made a connection up to this road and added a crosswalk. And that makes me think, I'm going to add one more connection up here, and then we'll have an actuated pedestrian crossing here so that if you were coming from this neighborhood to the top of the bluff, you could push the button here and have a safe crossing. The next two probably aren't going to be quite as utilitarian, probably more recreational facilities. I'm going to add one right here that links up this turn to these neighborhoods up here. But because of how steep it is, I don't know that we're actually going to save a lot in terms of distance. And I'll add one connection up here as well. And honestly, this grade is probably a little bit too extreme. So I will redo this one section right here. And there are two more paths I want to make. One is going to basically be a recreational facility that loops around the base right here and then connects up into this area. And the other is going to be a path that goes on up to the top of the road right here. And I decided to go a little bit harder with the paths than I initially intended. And the main reason for that is ultimately, whenever a new neighborhood is built, there's a park space requirement and the developer would be on the hook for building these paths. So if we can get them now, we absolutely should, because otherwise the city would be required to do it themselves. And that's just really challenging to do after the fact. So with our paths in place, let's move on to building parks and city services. We're going to be going through and placing city services momentarily, but I wanted to offer a bit of commentary about how this actually works in the real world. So in the real world, during a planning process, the planner would actually go out and ask every single agency if they can provide services to these new neighborhoods. And if they can't, what they would need to be able to provide services to them. So if it's a library, for instance, a library district, maybe they would need land dedicated for a library. If it's a police department, maybe they need a new squad car, maybe another police officer, or a brand new police station. So as the planner, I would actually go to each of those agencies and ask them for comment. The one agency that I wouldn't ask for any comments from is Deathcare, because that's not a public service and that's our biggest need here in this neighborhood. So I've actually gone through, and the only things that we really need are Deathcare, which is getting worse by the moment, and healthcare, which is part of Deathcare. So we're gonna place both of those in these neighborhoods, but I also want to place education. And funny enough, it's actually not something that we really need right now. We're in a pretty good place as far as education goes. But I'm going to use the elementary school to activate some of our paths. And I have a really unique way of doing that, and we'll do that after we place health and death care. And I'm going to place that right here along University, but we've got one issue. We've got this major power line that's going straight down University Avenue, and as a part of the University Avenue project, we're going to bury that. We'll place that underneath the road, right where it belongs. Now, one interesting thought. In the real world, wherever this power line is, could not have any structures built on it. So I think I'm going to place a path right here as a kind of a delineation of where our easement would be. So we won't build anything in this location. And now we'll know that that is exactly where the power line is. Nothing will get built there, and it has some utility for our citizens. We're going to place our death care first. And for this, I just want to find a relatively flat location. And I'll place that here along with most of the upgrades. We'll add the refrigeration expansion so we can hold more capacity. We'll also add the extra incinerator. And I'm going to add one more hearse garage as well. It might be overkill, but I'd rather overdo it and not need to worry about this than underdo it and continue our death wave. Now, I gave a 1-unit separation between University Avenue and this facility so that it doesn't look bad, but it still kind of looks a little bit janky. So I'm going to add key walls, or rather retaining walls. And that'll give us a slightly cleaner aesthetic, although that makes me think we need to shift this over to center it in this block. And I think that looks about as good as Deathcare can. So now we have the other side of life, which is healthcare, and we're going to place this fairly close by. We're going to place one of these Southwestern medical clinics, and I think I'll place that right on Elizabeth Street. And the main reason for that is that Elizabeth is really flat, and this asset starts to look pretty bad if it has a lot of terrain to deal with. So I'll place that right about here, and we won't worry about how morbid this is. And it's kind of strange that the death care was so excited about the healthcare being placed right here. So now my hope is this death care facility can help relieve some of the pressure that we have right here, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. We're going to move on to education. Now for this, I'm going to place the normal vanilla elementary school, and I'm going to put that right in the center of our first neighborhood that we developed here. This won't fit within our existing block, but I'm not overly concerned. We're just going to modify things a little bit. And I made a few modifications to this block and did a lot of decorating and detailing around the school, and here it is. Now, this thing was not needed. That's why it has 2 students. But I guess it is future-proofing us, considering we haven't added any homes to this neighborhood yet. But the whole reason that I wanted to add this wasn't because I wanted a school in the neighborhood. It was really because I wanted to steal this playground and plop it in a couple of spots throughout the neighborhood. In particular, I'm going to grab this thing, and with Anarchy on, I'm going to leave the school. I'm going to place this somewhere totally separate from the school. I'm going to place it right here. Now, this would be a way to sell this path. I'm not sure that these homeowners in particular would love this right here, but the rest of the neighborhood would. So I'm going to place this right here, and this should leave this operational. Now, the one thing that's kind of unfortunate about this asset is that it completely flattens the area around it. So I'll need to do a couple of modifications, but reasonably, I wanted to do some things to this asset anyway. And there we go. Just a little bit of light detailing around here. I think it looks pretty good. Now, the whole reason I wanted to go with this specific park is this is fully functional. Unlike vanilla parks, the kinds of parks that you might plop on the side of the road, this one doesn't need road access. All it needs is a pedestrian path. So because I stole this from the elementary school, this is indeed the elementary school. The main building's the elementary school, which means that that's where the garbage gets picked up. So this is kind of like plazas and promenades in City Skylines 1, where you have that one garbage collection point where everything just teleports there. We've taken the same concept and done that with this little playground right here. So this should be fully functional. I'm gonna hang out for just a moment and wait for someone to show up just to make sure that it's fully operational. And here we have the first visitor to our park. Now, to get them to come, I had to make a couple of small modifications. Basically, the path wasn't quite close enough to the park, but after I moved it closer to the park, now we're attracting some people to come visit it. Now, the one thing to keep in mind with these little parks is that they're not very attractive. The attractiveness is 1, so I wouldn't expect a ton of people to flock here or for the people to come here to remain here all that long. But it's just nice to see some activity here and see some people using this path to visit our park. So I'm going to place one more of these parks right up here, but that's all that I'm going to add for these. I don't want to overdo it. And there we go, much the same treatment as the last park. The only major difference is that I used a mulch decal instead of a dirt decal. Now, the one thing about the mulch decal, for whatever reason, if you get too close to the playground equipment, it disappears. So you got to be really careful if you use that one. Now, throughout the rest of the neighborhoods, we're going to add traditional parks. And one of my main goals in all of my builds is to ensure that every child in the city has access to a playground, that they can easily walk to a playground. So we're going to place lots and lots of the small playgrounds where residential development will be, which will be basically everywhere. The only area where we're going to have commercial is going to be along University right here, and then we'll have a small node of commercial right about here. Everywhere else is going to be residential, either single family or a bit of multifamily or row homes. I'm also going to place one large park right here as kind of the centerpiece of this neighborhood. I think it'll be a nice community gathering place. Let's begin with our small playgrounds, and I'm going to focus on placing these close to our trailheads. And I also placed them in areas that were not well served by either trails or other parks. Now I'm going to add a larger park right here. And for this one, I feel like the hedge park is going to be perfect. Because we have anarchy, I'm going to be able to plop this right here. And if it goes over the top of the road a little bit, it's not the end of the world. And I love the idea of this being a place where you could come and watch a concert in the summer right in the middle of this neighborhood with the backdrop of downtown Bend behind you. What a wonderful place. Speaking of having the skyline of Bend behind you, we're going to place a dog park with $1 million view, and we're going big. We're going to place a dog activity park. I'm going to place that very near our arterial intersection right here. I don't want to place it right on the arterial. That would make this very inaccessible. And I also don't want to place them on either Olive or Garnett Street right here because that would leave this feeling very janky. So I'm going to place it right about here. This would make it very easy to access if you were coming from University or Autumn, and we are not seeing any weird terraforming issues. I'll also use Move It to perfectly center this within the block. Perfect. And we will add a couple more parks up here along University in between some of our commercial spaces, but we're going to hold off on doing that until we zone in those commercial spaces. So with our city services in place, let's move on to land use planning. I've been going back and forth a lot about what I want to do with zoning, and what I've landed on is anything that's low density residential, I'm going to zone in, and I might use Move It to adjust things a bit, but I don't want to get overly prescriptive. But for any commercial, medium density, or mixed residential, we're going to plop that ourselves. So there are really 3 areas where we're going to be doing most of our plopping. The first is going to be right here, where I want to make sure that we have some sort of neighborhood serving use, a restaurant, a grocery store, maybe a gas station. Right here, I want to have a UK themed shopping center, kind of facing the park to make this a really vibrant area. And then we're going to plop basically everything up here. So I'm going to start out down here. And the thing I've got to really prevent myself from doing is going overboard. So I'm going to start out with the grocery store. And this is actually fairly easy to find. It's a Southwestern commercial 6x6 asset. So we just narrow it down to 6x6. All of these are grocery stores. Because this is a fairly modern area, I'm going to go with a level 3. And I'm going to plop this right off from Autumn Street. And of course, I just couldn't help myself. I had to deconstruct the asset, add in some appropriate parking, and I think it looks a ton better. And I think it also opens up this area right here for a gas station. So we're going to add that right here, facing Florence Lane. And there we go. I think that that's about perfect for this neighborhood. If you live in this neighborhood, you can walk there, no problem. And if you're driving past, it's easy enough to swing by the grocery store, grab a couple of things, and then be on your way. Now this area is going to be completely different than what we just did. Whereas that last area was really designed so that you could drive up to it quickly and leave, this is going to be an area where you come and spend some time and you walk around. We got this lovely park in the center, and I think that having some commercial spaces around it would really make this a vibrant part of the community. Now, because we have so many UK assets around here, I think it's only natural that we continue the UK theme in this area. So I'm going to specifically look for UK town center assets, and I'm going to randomize them through this area. And I figure we have to round this area out with a lovely pub right in the corner right here. Now, just because this is going to be a walkable area doesn't mean that we shouldn't have parking. So I'm going to try to add some in and kind of sneak it behind some of these buildings. And honestly, I'm really happy with the way that this turned out. I think that this would be a very popular district, not just for locals, but for people coming into the area as well. Now we finally get to build along University Avenue. And my general idea is going to be that I want a strong mix of uses throughout this entire area, and I want to limit the heights of things because really we're quite a ways out at this point and most of our height is down in this area. But before we add anything up here, I want to reconsider this roadway network just a little bit. I don't like that Butler Street turns in right here. It's not really utilizing the waterfront as good as it could, and it doesn't feel like it's connected into the rest of the downtown area. So I want to eliminate this. And then I just linked these grids together, which I think feels really natural. And while we're down here, there's two more changes I want to make. I'm going to add one road right here. And then I want to modify this road right here so that it turns into this new road. To me, that would feel very natural. But the best thing about this is it increases the size of this park right here, and it has that continuity now. Park Street now extends all the way up into our new neighborhood. I'm also noticing that this got a little bit janky right there. I will fix that before we start plopping. And that's not a perfect solution, but I honestly kind of like it more. Roads aren't perfect, and this one isn't either. So now let's start plopping our buildings. And I want to narrow things down and randomize them quite a bit. So we're going to be using both the northeastern pack and the southwestern pack. And I'm going to start out with some of our mixed use buildings. We'll place those, then we'll move on to medium density. So those are like our apartments. And then we'll have a whole bunch of row homes. And I'm going to begin with some of our deepest buildings so that we're filling up the blocks as best we can. Now, as I went through here, I just tried to randomize the buildings I was placing and tried to keep the heights sensible. So nothing too tall. Where we have a bit of height, it's right in the center here, and things are tapering off as we get to the edges here. So now I want to give a little bit more thought to other types of uses. So let's try for some commercial. And for our commercial, I want to get rid of the Southwest pack. Those are very suburban in character. And I'm just going to randomize the different commercial uses through here as well. At the edge of the neighborhood over here, I'm going to plop the corner theater. And this will kind of round out some of our uses down here. And while I'm down here, I also want to modify Applegate Lane. I'm not sure that we'll build down here today, but I just think it's going to look a little bit better to have these extending out of the ways. And we're going to round things out with row homes. So I'm going to try to fit these in wherever I have awkward gaps. These are absolutely perfect, and I can just plop these in all over the place. The one thing I want to do is try to find architecture that is similar. So in this area, for instance, this looks very similar. So I don't know why we wouldn't put two of these right here. And I will eliminate the Southwest pack from this one as well. I don't want to inadvertently have some Southwestern looking buildings throughout here. I've got to admit, I really love the urban form of this area. It feels really cozy to me, but it doesn't feel all that special, and I want to try to make it feel a bit more special now. So I want to add some pocket parks through here. I also want to add some parking in between the blocks and add a bit of landscaping. Now look at all the cars throughout here. I think the parking is really necessary. And I know that some of you are probably not going to love that we're going to add as much as we're going to, but I'd rather have the parking in between the buildings than on the street. I want the street to feel like it's the pedestrian realm. I also want to point out, I'm not going to do anything with the coastline yet. I feel like we've really got to do some special things here, and it's not the time to do it just yet, not in this episode. I think that this looks absolutely outstanding, and it leaves us in a good place to do the rest of our zoning. And for this, it's going to be fairly fast. I have a couple of ideas. Basically, we're going to go with the Southwestern USA zoning throughout most of this, but I want to have some UK zoning in this area to extend up the prior building design up into the new area that's directly adjacent to it. So let's begin over here. And for the areas that are flat, I'm going to get really close with the buildings. Just basically completely fill this in. And then in these hillier areas, I've tried to separate the parcels just a little bit so that the terrain conforming is a little bit easier for the assets. And honestly, I think that when you look at it, it ends up looking a ton more natural then. The only thing that I don't love is a lot of the assets have fences and then they don't line up. But we'll hide that with landscaping, and sometimes we've got to be okay with a little bit of imperfection. I'm going to switch gears over here and add some UK housing. We're going to start out with some of our duplexes as we are closer to our town center here, and then we'll go back into single family homes as we get further away. And then in our final area up here, we're going to start out with Southwestern assets and then blend into some of our North American beach properties so we have a nice transition into this neighborhood right here. And I think that this looks absolutely outstanding. But I've got to say, I'm glad that we had a mixture of plopping and zoning, because even with zoning most of this in, this took a heck of a long time. But I think the results really speak for themselves. This looks outstanding, at least in my opinion. So with our zoning in place, let's move on to expanding our transit. Now I'm going to build a bus route that many of you aren't going to like. It's going to be a coverage route. And what that means is it's a route that provides service to an area, but it's not necessarily awesome service. It's the kind of service that you could reach, but it might not be super direct. And that's because this area, for the most part, isn't super dense. Now, the other thing about a coverage route is it extends the paratransit service area to this entire neighborhood. And that's really important because paratransit is an essential service for anyone who's elderly or disabled. And generally, you can't cover an area unless it has fixed route service. So that's one of the reasons that we'll bring it here. Now, for this service, what we're going to do is basically grab these couple of stops and we'll reuse them. And then we're going to bring the route down here, go up Autumn, go down University, and then circulate right back down to our transit centers. We'll just have a looping motion through here. I will try to make sure that our stops are by some of these paths because that'll add utility for the route. And once again, because this is a local bus route, every couple of blocks will have stops. I want to make sure that we stop at the grocery store. That is a really key consideration when designing bus routes. You want to make sure that you have access to food. So this is a really important spot. And I'm sure that this house would be just furious that the bus stops right in front of there. Now, I'm deciding to run this route behind University Avenue. The main reason for that is I'm worried about reliability on University. So having a street that's parallel to University only a block away will ensure that the bus maintains its reliability. And then I'll send the route up this way so we don't have to deal with this existing neighborhood. I'm sure that they would be really reluctant to have buses going down their street. And with that, we're ready to start our routes. And we have one complete, so I'll just do that in the opposite direction as well. And the first route will be the Berta light green line and the Berta dark blue line. Those are terrible names, but here's the thing, I'm running out of colors. And then there are a few changes I want to make to some of these stops. In particular, we have stops like this one where you can see that this bay got really large. So I'm just going to add nodes. So to do that, I'm just double clicking. That shortens that up. And then I also want to add a crosswalk. Probably excessive to have it on both sides, but I think it looks a little bit nicer. And it looks like both routes already have some excellent utilization, which is fantastic. I think at the very end, we'll come through and add some buses if necessary, but for now, I think it's time to move on to a little bit of landscaping and detailing. Landscaping today is going to be pretty straightforward. I want to do the normal stuff like adding surfaces, adding street trees, making sure that we've got trees in yards and on parking lots. But then I also want to take a look at all the bluffs and really add a dense forest of trees. That's something that really jumped out to me when looking at the bluffs in both La Crosse and Dubuque. You just don't really see through the forest at all. So at this angle, I'd expect there to be a really thick canopy of trees. So we're going to do that not only in the areas that we've built today, but also in the other bluffs around downtown Bend. And hopefully by the end of this, it's going to feel really nice and natural. So with our plan in place, let's get landscaping. I've got to tell you, I think that the dense landscaping changes the entire vibe of the place and makes it feel 1,000 times more realistic. So I'm going to probably be doing this all over the map. It doesn't seem to impact performance all that much, and it looks outstanding. Now, the way that I was able to do this is a little bit different than I was expecting. I thought I'd just spray trees and then use Anarchy to place trees in the gaps individually, but I was able to use the line tool with a 5 offset and a 5 variation and to just draw lines of oak trees over the top of the existing trees. And my goodness, it looks so good. So if you want to have dense landscaping like this, that is a very viable strategy to get it done relatively quickly. In real time, it was about 40 minutes to plant all these trees, which isn't that bad, especially considering I added street trees on basically every street, and I also added individual trees to a number of the lots. I also went through and I added landscaping to older parts of the city. So this wasn't just landscaping this build, it was also landscaping many other builds. So I'm just really pleased with this technique. And ultimately, I just think it gives it a park-like vibe right in the center of the city, which is outstanding and really has that Dubuque vibe as well, which I love. And with our landscaping complete, there's only one more thing left to do. Let's take inventory of what we've done with a brief city tour. Now, in zooming out and looking at the build from this vantage point, it is very clear just how large today's build was. We actually worked in an area that was larger than downtown Bend. And I've been noticing that this is a theme lately. My builds have been getting bigger and bigger, the episodes longer and longer, and the time in between videos has been growing as well. And I'm curious to know, do you like these more action-packed videos, or would you prefer shorter videos that come up more frequently? Let me know in the comments below. For instance, I think that today's video could have been 2 videos. We could have focused on the dense urban area and then the surrounding suburban area, but I decided to consolidate them into one. And I want to know how you feel about that. Another thing I'm curious about is how you feel about this. This is Myrtle Park, and on stream, I decided to redo this neighborhood. Basically, we had a whole bunch of vanilla assets in here because this was one of the first things that we built in Bend. So now that we have the region packs, on stream I decided to swap out some of the assets and just in general use some of the new tools and skills that we've gained over the last 2 years, and I think that the neighborhood looks a ton better. But the only reason I was willing to do this is because I don't intend to redevelop this area. So in areas where I think that I'm going to redevelop, I won't do anything on stream, but I'm curious to know how you feel about this. Whenever I do this, I will show it to you at the end of the episode so you get an idea of what's changed. And obviously, I'm releasing all the saves onto Paradox Mods so you can dive into it yourself if you're really curious about the details. So again, let me know in the comments below. How do you feel about this? Do you want me to keep doing this, or do you want me to stop and do everything in videos? Let me know. But with that, I think that we're going to leave it here. And I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. If you did, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. I want to thank you so much for your time today. There's a million things you could have been doing. You decided to hang out with me and invite Myrtle into the city. And for that, I appreciate you and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.